All right, let's talk some late night Niners here. This is the 49ers Report. I'm Chase Sr., just sitting on my couch talking into a microphone into this camera because I want to keep my eyes on this Monday Night Football game between the Ravens and the Lions, a really good one as we're well through the third quarter, 21-21, one of the better games of the week. And so going to be keeping my eyes on that one. But, of course, there's a lot to talk about here on the show. The 49ers news of the day, a devastating blow for San Francisco. Nick Bosa tearing his ACL yesterday in that dramatic win over the Arizona Cardinals. He's now out for the year, and this is a huge loss and huge hit for this 49ers team and especially this defense. And you can tell by how players were responding yesterday and what they were saying and how they've taken to social media today into tonight and relaying the news and passing along their thoughts and feelings for their teammate, a guy who they voted as team captain. And Nick Bosa posted on Instagram a couple of pictures, and the caption was just a broken heart. And for a guy who put so much into the game, who takes his body and his conditioning so seriously, he probably feels as though he got robbed of another year. And for Bosa, he has a long injury history that can impact what he's able to accomplish in his entire NFL career. In 2015, his senior year in high school, had a partially torn ACL. His final year at Ohio State, he had this core muscle injury and surgery. And so the Niners still took him number 2 behind Kyler Murray, but then he missed much of training camp. Had a great rookie year. Year 2 in 2020, tears his left ACL after he partially tore his right ACL in high school. And then he had that groin injury last year, which according to some people was a lot worse than what he led on. And now game 3, early into game 3, he tears his right ACL again. And this really sucks for him. It sucks for the Niners because of how great of a player he is. Since coming into the league, when you include the playoffs, he is number 1 in pressures in the NFL, number 4 in sacks. And it sucks for him personally as well. There's a reason why his teammates voted him a team captain. Very well respected in that locker room. Now, as we saw on Sunday, it is possible to survive without him for a game like the Niners did against the Cardinals. But for the rest of the season, it's going to be difficult to survive without him. And so coming up on this show, who are some Niners trade targets following the Nick Bosa injury that San Francisco can go after? We're going to dive into it here. But a quick reminder, if you want daily Niners coverage from yours truly, regardless of where I am, what I'm doing, I'm always talking Niners, hit that subscribe button here on the show. I saw this list too, and it's pretty brutal for San Francisco. The list of players who they have signed to contract extensions just somewhat recently. Nick Bosa, hurt. Brandon Ayuk, hurt. Both of them in consecutive years, shredded their knees. George Kittle currently hurt. Brock Purdy, hurt. So Kittle and Purdy signed their extensions this offseason. Ayuk, last year. Bosa, 2023. All those players currently injured, and hopefully Purdy can come back this week against Jacksonville. Not going to be a cupcake game. I like what Liam Cohen's been able to do in the early going, even though I still think Trevor Lawrence is mid. And then other recent contract extensions. Deebo Samuel, no longer on the team. He signed his deal going into 2022. Javon Hargrave, released. He's on the Vikings. Christian McCaffrey, won Offensive Player of the Year in 2023. Got a new deal, made him the highest paid running back at the time, and right after signing that deal, played 4 games last year. You wonder why the 49ers wanted to start building through the draft? This is why. They got old, injured, and expensive fast. And sometimes that's a cruelty also of the NFL, which also stands for not for long. Now, elite coaching can certainly help you win and survive without stars. Robert Saleh can do that with this 49ers defense in 2025 without Nick Bosa. How? Going to be hard. He's going to have to get creative with personnel, with his play calling, with play designs, and he's going to have to put players in a position to succeed. The back end is going to have to hold up for San Francisco. Robert Saleh at times going to have to get a little bit more aggressive and blitz a little bit more. In 2020, when Bosa got lost, what was that, game 2 on the road at MetLife? That awful turf surface. The Niners defense held up pretty well the rest of the way with Robert Saleh as DC and without Nick Bosa. In EPA, expected points added, they were total 8th in EPA, EPA per dropback number 9, and EPA per rush number 5. So that goes to show you they can perform well collectively as a defense without Nick Bosa. And I have seen some chatter. Bryce Huff, he's been great. He's been better than Nick Bosa. Stop that. That's not true. But has he been really good to start the year? No doubt about it. And his fast get-off is just something to witness. Pretty unbelievable to watch. He's so quick getting into the backfield. And that makes him a very effective pass rusher. But it's easier to do that when you're Robin instead of Batman. And now the double teams that Nick Bosa has been getting are now going to go to Bryce Huff. Another thing, too, and this hurts San Francisco and Saleh, the NASCAR package was awesome early in the year. Bryce Huff could line up at defensive end opposite of Nick Bosa, or Nick Bosa could line up at defensive tackle. And then Yetur Gross-Matos, Michael Williams, and Sam Okawanu could play defensive end or defensive tackle. Now you can't do as much of that without Bosa, who's such a special player. As far as the trade targets for San Francisco, the players who the Niners could bring in by way of a trade, this all varies, obviously, depending on asking price here. And there are some stars on this list. There are gettable players. And there are players who could be dealt if teams elect to sell at the NFL trade deadline. Trey Hendrickson. I think he's gettable because of the Bengals' actions, right? Trey Hendrickson, no player in the NFL has more sacks than him the last 2 years, in 2023 and 2024, 17 and a half the last 2 seasons. And to start this year, he's once again been elite. He wanted a contract extension. The Bengals didn't give it to him. They clearly don't have plans for him long term. They gave him more money for 2025. But while he could get dealt, Joe Burrow's out with turf toe until December. Jake Browning is trash. If the Bengals start racking up all these losses and they have no plans to retain Hendrickson long term, why not try to get back a first-round pick or a second-round pick for him if they end up losing all these games? Kayvon Thibodeaux is an interesting name because the New York Giants are awful, and they have Brian Burns and Abdul Carter already. The Giants are 0-3, and coming up, they play the 3-0 Chargers, a desperate 1-2 Broncos team, and the Eagles twice in 5 weeks. They could lose all those games. So they could find a replacement in Kayvon Thibodeaux to be a guy who's also under contract for next year because the Giants exercised his 5th-year option. 77.5 run defense grade, 12.5% pass rush win rate, 12 pressures, 5 run stops, 2 sacks so far this year for the Giants. There are 2 players on the Eagles 53 who have been healthy scratches this year who could be gettable in a trade with Philadelphia. And that line of communication is open. Howie Roseman's always wheeling and dealing. And the Eagles and the Niners made the trade a few months ago for Bryce Huff. That's Azeez Ojulari, who's a 24-year-old pass rusher, who's been very productive when healthy. And Ogbo Okoronkwo, who has played in the wide 9 before under Jim Schwartz with Cleveland. He also played under D'Amico Ryans in 2022. That's a player who could be brought in by San Francisco. Arden Key is playing for the Titans. He has, I believe, 6.5 sacks the last 2 years. The Niners turned his career around. And he played very well for San Francisco. That's why he earned a little bit of a nice payday with Jacksonville. Tennessee stinks. Arden Key could be available. If the Chiefs continue to not play well. And Arden Key, I think, is in the final year of his contract. Charles Omenihu is in the final year of his contract. Another player who revived his career with San Francisco. He really wasn't doing much with Houston. He was a trade deadline acquisition for the Niners in 2021. And he was used in that NASCAR package, playing defensive end, playing defensive tackle. Kwity Paye, former Michigan Wolverine, familiarity with Gus Bradley with the Indianapolis Colts. He's in a contract year. A player who I would absolutely love, who I think is only going to continue to get better, and we've seen signs of him really developing, is Travon Walker of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was the number 1 pick a few years ago ahead of Aiden Hutchinson. I would have gone Aiden Hutchinson over Travon Walker. I said that a lot, but it's not to say that Walker isn't good. He's really good. He can play the run. He's still young, still developing, still getting better, a very well-rounded player, and the Jags haven't given him a contract extension. Jaelan Phillips is a player for the Miami Dolphins who is really productive when healthy, but does have some injury concerns. But the Dolphins could sell for that same reason, and they're 0-3. Bradley Chubb could become available. Older, injury-prone. I don't love that idea. Another player on the Giants, Brian Burns. If the Giants are tired of burning cash while not winning at all, Brian Burns is one of the most underrated and best pass rushers in the game. There's some practice squad options. Clelin Ferrell, who played well for the Niners a couple of years ago, was just signed by the Los Angeles Chargers. Isiah Foskey, former second-round pick out of Notre Dame by the New Orleans Saints, was let go. He's on the Bengals practice squad. Kaimon Rucker of the Baltimore Ravens, a name thrown out there by friend of the show, Larry Krueger. And then Bradyn Swinson of the New England Patriots, another practice squad type of player. So there are players out there who the Niners could trade for. The free agent options, I'm not even going to go through them because they all stink. And some of them have signed with teams recently. Jadeveon Clowney signed with the Cowboys. Za'Darius Smith signed with the Eagles, and he's played well. So there's really not any options in free agency. I'm trying to think of other names who are on the free agency market. Again, just not good options at all. So I think a trade is in play. The 49ers have proved that they are willing to be aggressive in making in-season trades under John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. And they've shown to start this year with all these injuries. What a hell of a job by Kyle Shanahan, Robert Saleh, and Brant Boyer to coach to the level that they've coached with all of these injuries for this team to still be 3-0 with an opportunity easily to go 4-0 playing the Jags. And you should be able to beat Jacksonville in week 4. All right, I'll be back in the studio tomorrow. Put out 2 videos earlier today. Nick Bosa breaking news, recapping what happened yesterday. Check those videos out. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in a few hours. Peace.